Have you ever been on a date with someone who seemed interested during the evening, but then completely disappeared afterward? I'm going to reveal exactly why this happens and how to make that person unable to stop thinking about you after every encounter. In the next few minutes, you'll learn the 5 psychological strategies that turn an ordinary date into an unforgettable experience that will have them desperately seeking you out. Imagine this: you leave a date, and instead of waiting around for texts or wondering if they'll call again, your phone won't stop ringing. That person can't focus on anything else because something in their mind is pushing them to seek you out again and again. Sound impossible? It's not. And it all starts with understanding something that most people completely ignore. The first major truth is that attraction isn't created during the date. It's created after it, in the empty spaces, in what you don't say and what you don't give. Think about this. How many times have you been more interested in someone who seemed unreachable than in someone who was completely available to you? It's human nature. We want what we can't easily have. Most people make the same fatal mistake on dates. They try to impress by giving too much, talking too much, being too available. They believe that the more they show of themselves, the more interesting they'll be to the other person. But it works exactly the opposite way. When you reveal everything about yourself in a single date, you eliminate the mystery. And without mystery, there's no tension. Without tension, there's no desire. Neil Strauss explains this very clearly. Scarcity creates value. When something is abundant and easy to obtain, we lose interest. But when something is scarce, limited, hard to get, we automatically assign it more value. This isn't manipulation, it's basic psychology. It's how our primitive brain works. So how do you apply this on a real date? Imagine you're having dinner with someone you like. Instead of telling your entire life story, you reveal only interesting fragments. When they ask about your work, don't give a complete explanation. Say something like, "I do something pretty unique, but it's complicated to explain here," and change the subject. Do you notice what you just did? You created an open question in their mind that will keep resonating after the date. Here's a practical exercise. During your next date, for every personal question you answer completely, leave 2 partially unanswered. Don't be evasive, be intriguing. The difference is crucial. Evasive generates distrust, intriguing generates curiosity, and curiosity is the fuel of desire. Do you see how this changes the entire dynamic? Instead of being the one who chases, you become the one who is chased. But this is just the beginning, because there's something even more powerful you need to understand. The second revelation that will change how you relate to others is the power of strategic absence. Most people think they should always be available after a good date. They respond to messages immediately, make plans for the next day, try to keep the conversation active 24/7. This is exactly the opposite of what you should do. Your absence should be more intense than your presence. When someone gets used to you always being there, you lose all your power. But when you disappear strategically, when you're not available when they expect you to be, something fascinating happens in their mind. They start wondering where you are, what you're doing, who you're with. Their imagination begins to work in your favor. Neil Strauss says something brilliant about this. The person who is least emotionally invested in the relationship is the one who has control. It's not about being cold or cruel. It's about maintaining your emotional independence. When you depend too much on another person's approval, you lose your natural attractiveness. Think about someone you know who's always available to you. Someone who responds to your messages in seconds, who cancels their plans to see you, who says yes to everything you propose. How do you feel toward that person? You probably take them for granted. It's not your fault, it's human nature. We value what requires effort to obtain. Here's the exercise. After your next date, don't make contact for 48 hours. No messages, no calls, no social media. Let them wonder what you're doing. During those 48 hours, they'll be reliving every moment of the date, analyzing every word you said, every gesture you made. Your absence will be working harder than your presence, but be careful. There's a very fine line between strategic absence and total disinterest. You can't disappear forever. Timing is crucial. After those 48 hours, you make contact in a specific way. And that brings us to the third fundamental principle that will separate your approach from 99% of people who fail at dating. It's about the art of intermittent communication. It's not what you say, but when you say it and how often. Subscribe right now so you don't miss any of these strategies that are changing the lives of thousands of people. Hit the bell because this type of content can completely change your social life. Intermittent communication works like a psychological drug. When you give attention unpredictably, you create what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. It's the same principle that makes slot machines so addictive. You don't know when the reward will come, so you keep trying. In relationships, it works the same way. When your messages arrive unpredictably, when your attention isn't guaranteed, the other person develops a compulsive need to obtain it. They can't predict when you'll respond, when you'll be available, when you'll give them that validation they're seeking. And that uncertainty makes them addicted to you. Strauss describes it perfectly. Be unpredictable in your availability but consistent in your quality. This means that when you are present, be completely present. When you send a message, make it meaningful. When you have a conversation, make it memorable. But don't do this constantly. Let's see a practical example. After those 48 hours of silence, you send a simple but intriguing message. You don't ask, "How are you?" like everyone else. Instead, you write something like, "I just passed by that place we talked about, and it made me smile." It's personal. It connects to something you shared, but it doesn't demand an immediate response. If they respond quickly, you don't. Wait a few hours. Respond with something equally intriguing but then disappear again. You create an unpredictable pattern that keeps them hooked. Every time they see your name on their phone, they feel a small rush of emotion because they know you're not predictable. The exercise for this week: establish specific times to check and respond to messages. No more than 3 times a day. This will automatically create spaces of absence that will generate anxiety and desire in the other person. Remember, anxiety and desire are very connected neurologically. But here comes something nobody tells you about this process. The fourth element that makes someone unable to get you out of their head is what I call planting curiosities. Every interaction you have should plant a seed of curiosity that grows in their mind when you're not present. Most people have completely predictable conversations on dates. They talk about work, family, hobbies, and that's it. But truly magnetic people do something different. They leave clues about fascinating aspects of their life without revealing everything. They create psychological hooks that the other person needs to resolve. For example, instead of saying, "I work in marketing," you say, "I help companies understand why people make irrational decisions." Do you see the difference? The second version generates questions. What kind of decisions? How do you do it? Can you read my mind? You've planted a seed of curiosity that will grow after the date. Strauss teaches that people fall in love with mysteries, not with complete biographies. When you reveal everything about yourself, you eliminate any reason for them to keep thinking about you. But when you plant unanswered questions in their mind, they become intrusive thoughts that haunt them. Here's the exact technique. On every date, casually mention 3 intriguing things about yourself, but don't explain them completely. It could be a strange trip you took, an unusual skill you have, or an experience that changed your perspective. You just mention them in passing and immediately change the subject. For example, "I once got lost in a Thai forest for 3 days and that experience completely changed how I see life. But anyway, tell me about your favorite project." What did you just do? You planted a fascinating story and then closed it, directing attention toward them. Now their mind will be working to complete that story long after the date ends. The exercise: practice telling half stories. Develop an arsenal of 5 to 7 interesting personal stories, but learn to tell them in a way that generates more questions than they answer. The key is in the timing. You plant them and then change the subject before they can go deeper. Do you feel how this is changing your way of thinking about dates? It's no longer about impressing by giving everything about yourself. It's about creating an enigma they want to solve. But the fifth and final principle is the most powerful of all. The fifth and most devastating strategy is what I call selective validation. This will separate your impact from any other person they've ever met. Most people on dates try to be pleasant all the time. They nod at everything, agree with everything, avoid any kind of confrontation or disagreement. This makes them completely forgettable. Magnetic people do the opposite. They don't validate everything the other person says. They're selective with their approval. When they finally give their validation, it has enormous emotional weight because they don't give it easily. Strauss explains it like this: your approval should be something that's earned, not something that's given automatically. When you validate everything, your validation means nothing. But when you're selective, when you show disagreement on some points and approval on others, your opinion becomes valuable. This doesn't mean being unpleasant or confrontational. It means having standards. It means not agreeing just to be likable. If they say something you don't agree with, you express your viewpoint respectfully but firmly. If they share something that really impresses you, then you give genuine and specific validation. The psychological difference is enormous. When someone feels that your approval is hard to obtain, they'll work harder to get it. Unconsciously, they'll start modifying their behavior to impress you. They'll wonder what you think of them, if you approve of them, if they're up to your standards. Here's the most important exercise. During your next date, identify at least one thing you don't completely agree with and express it elegantly. Then, find one thing that really impresses you about that person and give them very specific validation. For example, "I'm not sure I agree with that, I see things differently." And then later, "I'm really impressed by the way you talked about your project. That shows a very unique perspective." Do you notice what happens? You create an emotional contrast. You're not predictable in your approval. This generates a psychological tension that will keep them thinking about you long after the date. They'll wonder if you really like them, what opinion you have of them, how they can earn your complete approval. Selective validation also helps you. It allows you to maintain your authenticity and your standards. You don't become someone who says yes to everything just to be liked. You become someone whose opinion really matters. But there's a crucial warning. This only works if you're genuine. You can't fake disagreement just for strategy. It must come from your real values, from what you really think. Authenticity is detected unconsciously, and if you're faking it, the entire effect is lost. Combine all 5 principles and something magical happens. Scarcity creates value. Strategic absence generates positive anxiety. Intermittent communication creates addiction. Planted curiosities occupy their mind, and selective validation makes them work for your approval. It's not just one tactic, it's a complete system that transforms how people perceive and remember you. If you made it this far, it means you're ready for real change in your social life. But knowledge without action is useless. These principles only work if you implement them consistently. Let me tell you something that will change your perspective forever. The difference between people who succeed at dating and those who don't isn't in their physical appearance, their money, or their social status. It's in how they handle emotional energy. Magnetic people understand that attraction is an emotional state, not a logical decision. When you implement these 5 principles, you're not manipulating anyone. You're creating the natural emotional conditions for attraction to flourish. You're working with human psychology, not against it. You're being selective with your energy instead of wasting it on anyone who crosses your path. Hit the notification bell right now because in upcoming videos I'm going to teach you exactly how to handle different personality types on dates, how to create conversations that generate deep emotional connection, and the mistakes that 95% of people make that ruin any chance of a second date. Think about this. Every date you have from now on can be completely different. Instead of going out hoping they'll like you, you go out knowing you're going to create an experience they can't forget. Instead of chasing, you become the one who is chased. Instead of begging for attention, you become someone whose attention is valued. But this requires a fundamental mindset shift. You have to stop thinking you need to impress everyone and start thinking that not everyone deserves complete access to you. You have to stop being available to anyone at any time and start being selective with your time and energy. The next time you go out with someone, don't go with the mindset of, "I hope they like me." Go with the mindset of, "Let's see if this person is up to my standards." This simple shift in perspective will transform your entire presence and energy. Remember that authentic confidence is incredibly attractive, and confidence comes from knowing you have value regardless of what any specific person thinks of you. When you internalize this, you automatically become less needy, less anxious, more present, more authentic. I want you to do something right now. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself leaving your next date knowing you did everything right. Imagine yourself receiving messages from that person, asking when you're going to see each other again. Imagine being the one who decides if you want to give them a second chance. How does that feeling of power and control over your social life feel? That feeling isn't a fantasy. It's completely achievable when you apply these principles consistently. But consistency is key. You can't apply them once and expect permanent results. You have to make them part of your natural way of relating. Here's your action plan for the next 30 days. Implement a different principle each week. The first week, focus on creating scarcity and mystery. The second week, practice strategic absence. The third week, perfect your intermittent communication. The fourth week, master selective validation. The fifth week, integrate everything into a natural system. I also want you to keep a record of the results. Write down how people react when you implement each principle. Observe the changes in their behavior, in their messages, in their level of interest. This will help you calibrate your approach and understand what works best for your specific personality. But there's something more important than any technique: respect for yourself and others. These principles work because they're based on real psychological dynamics, but they should always be applied from a place of authenticity and mutual respect. It's not about playing with people's emotions, it's about creating more authentic and meaningful connections. The truth is that when you stop desperately chasing others' approval, you paradoxically become more attractive. When you have standards and maintain them, people respect you more. When you're selective with your time and energy, people value the moments you spend with them more. This isn't just a change in your dating life, it's a change in how you relate to the world. When you internalize these principles, all your relationships will improve. Friendships, family, work, everything. Because in the end, it all comes down to how you value your own energy and how you allow others to access it. If you're ready to make this change, if you're tired of being predictable and forgettable, if you want to experience what it's like to have real options in your social life, then write in the comments, "I choose to be unforgettable." I want to see how many people are really ready to implement these changes. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I have much more content that's going to transform how you relate to others. And turn on all notifications, because in the next video, I'm going to teach you exactly what to say in the first 5 minutes of a date to create a deep emotional connection that will last far beyond that night. Your social life is about to change forever. It just depends on whether you're willing to leave behind the old patterns that haven't worked for you and embrace a new way of relating, based on real psychology, not on hopes and fantasies. The power is in your hands. Use it wisely.